what happens when you bring your friendships together and then create a space that's accepting, non-judgmental, where we can just really dive into those matters of our faith and talk about those things of the heart that really matter to us.
How is everyone? It's so good to see everybody. You all say yay for me, I'm here. Yay. 10 weeks. This is 10 weeks we've been meeting together. We got to stop meeting this way. Seriously enough, who can believe this is the last coffee? This one is the longest one we've ever done in series, and it seems like it went by the fastest. 10 weeks, and it's just, has it flown by for you all as well? Absolutely flown by. So let's end strong today, okay? Let's end strong. I know there's lots of things that are heavy on people's hearts, and there's only like 4 more Fridays until Christmas, but we're not going to worry about any of that stuff today, right? Lost you on that one. Okay, listen, I wanted to thank you. Thank you so much for praying for me this past weekend. I was invited to do the retreat with our coffee in Albuquerque, and that church uses coffee as one of their women's ministries, so I was blessed to be able to spend Thursday, Friday, and Saturday with that group of women, and they were fabulous, and I loved every minute of it, and it's so wonderful to go out and meet the other coffee groups. And then after leaving Albuquerque, I scooted over to Indianapolis, and I was able to meet with a lot of the coffee girls there, and so it's so much fun. I wish all of you all could just, well, we got to figure out a way to go meet all these other coffee groups, because they're such a blessing, and they just love the Lord, and they take care of each other, and they're doing exactly what we do in here. And it's just amazing to me how God allows our influence to go into what they're doing, and then their influence to come back to us. So it's a wonderful thing to know about all the coffees that are spreading out, and even new ministries that God is going to be doing through our coffee groups that we'll be telling you about a little bit later. But some real possibilities of how God is going to be growing what we're doing. So to each of you who have worked so hard to make coffee what it is, who have worked so hard to make these last 10 weeks what it has been, we just have to just say thank you so much. It's every woman in this room has had a part of making coffee what it is. A lot of people have been working behind the scenes. A lot of people are here, and you can see them doing things. A lot of people, with everybody gives what they can give. And then you come in here and you're willing to share yourself with the women around your table. And that's the true treasure. That's why we do coffee the way we do coffee. It's because our experiences through our faith walk, our experiences of how God has touched our lives, our experiences of how we have gotten through certain things that man would say you couldn't get through. You would say that you couldn't get through if you'd known about it in advance. And that's how we are able to equip one another. Remember, coffee stands for what? Conversations of friends of faith. All faiths. We don't talk about denominations. We don't talk about what church you do go to or you don't go to, or if you went to Sunday school, if you didn't, because that's not important to us. What's important to us is what? That you're here and God is here, and we want to talk about that, right? Isn't that great? It's just a unique kind of thing that we have going on, girls. And there's not a day that goes by that I am not so thankful for you, that I can come and be a part of you. So again, just thanks for everybody who did. And there's an evaluation that you're going to get later to kind of fill out. It's kind of basic, fun, that Jean wrote up for us, and that will dictate what we do in the future. Will there be a coffee? Will there be leadership to lead the coffee? Those types of things. So when you get a chance, if you'll fill those out. Okay, so I got this little thing in the mail, email, and I just had to share it with you. It's Meredith's husband, who we have just got this thing going on. I just love him, Meredith. But he is like the funniest person in the world. Of course, I'm so attracted to humor, and he is just a hoot, but he's brilliant in the Bible. So he will send me this little text, and he interweaves the Old Testament and the New Testament and life today and everything in a joke. And I'm thinking, one of these days, I want to be like that. But they sent this to me, and I'm going to share some of it. It's so good. It was a 5th grade assignment. And they asked the kids to explain God, I think maybe in a current way or something. And so this was some of the responses from this 5th grade assignment. God is like Bayer aspirin. He works miracles. God is like Coke. He's the real thing. God is like Hallmark cards. He cares enough to send his very best. God is like Tide. He gets the stains out, others leave behind. God is like General Electric. He brings good things to life. God is like Walmart. He has everything. Isn't that great? God is like Scotch tape. You can't see him, but you know he's there. God is like Delta. He's ready when you are. Well, I'm always ready. How about you all? God is like Allstate. You're in good hands with him. God is like VO5 hairspray. He holds through all kinds of weather. I love that. This is a good one. God is like Dial soap. Aren't you glad you have him? Don't you wish everybody did? How cute is that? God is like the post office. Neither rain, nor snow, nor sleet, nor ice will keep him from his appointed destination. God is like Bounty. He's the quicker picker-upper. He can handle the tough jobs, and he won't fall apart on you. That's nice to know. And this is the reason I read all these. God is like Maxwell coffee, good to the very last drop. And that's what I pray coffee has been for you all, for all of us, is that, to the very last minute, that it has been so good, so refreshing, so uplifting, but more than anything, that it really has been able to help all of us to discover the everyday treasure that God is in our life and how he has gone before us to leave the treasures that we find every day. And just the thought that he has gone before us is soothing to me, because I don't know where my path might take me tomorrow, but I know he's already there. And that's a soothing thought, isn't it? We could almost leave with just that thought, couldn't we? But we won't. We're going to read about a man in the Bible. I'm going to read just a few verses this morning. It's really funny. Have y'all ever noticed how I always have my Bible marked? Do you know why? Because I get so nervous trying to find books of the Bible in front of people, and I can't find it. It's just like, I know Matthew's in here somewhere. He's just hiding from me. The pressure. Do you all feel pressure like that? It's like, oh no, mark it. Don't you dare try to show them that you know where Mark is in the Bible or Luke. Now, where is Revelations again? But we're going to go into Luke. And I just want you to sit and just listen to this story. We're going to talk about this man just for a few minutes. And then we're going to end coffee on such a good note today, okay? We're going to talk about Luke. We're going to start in chapter 19. And I'm going to read a few verses. How many of you have heard about the little man called Zacchaeus? How many of you sang about him in Vacation Bible School? How many want to sing about him today? You will? Come on, Jew. Okay, here we go. Verse 1, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. He was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus, who was the chief tax collector. Now, the chief tax collector at that time was probably not your most favored man in the community. The Roman Empire was divided into parts, and basically what they did was they decided the taxes in each of the districts, and then they would have a tax collector who would bid on a certain district, and then if he got that district, let's say if you lived in Hunt Valley and that was your district, and bought, and the state of Maryland wanted $1,000 for the taxes for that district. Well, if I bought that district, then I could come in and charge anything I wanted to because it was mine. So I could charge you any amount of money I wanted to, and anything over $1,000 was my money. And if you'll read on, it says he was the chief tax collector and he was wealthy. So that tells you that what he did was he applied lots of pressure to get lots of extra money. He would use his influence to intimidate, threaten, do whatever he had to do to get the money from the people who really didn't have the money to give anyway. So Zacchaeus was the chief tax collector. He was very wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, though. But being a short man, he could not because of the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed into a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must go to your home today." So Zacchaeus came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to murmur, "He has gone to be the guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is the son of Abraham." So it's a wonderful story about a wee little man, right? A little man in a big world facing a big God. And that's how I wanted to end today when we think about coffee and the everyday treasures. Zacchaeus just kept coming to my mind when I was thinking about ending this. And so we're going to just talk just a few minutes about him before you go into your table talk time. But Zacchaeus, we know from just those few verses, was a man about town, wasn't he? He was a man of position. He was a man of power. He was a man of prestige. He was a man of great, great wealth. He was a man of great pride. He carried a lot of pride in all that he had accumulated. No doubt he had worked very hard in his career. No doubt he had given countless hours to what he was doing, his vocation. He had invested greatly, probably given most of his life. It wasn't a 40-hour week, long, long hours. Zacchaeus had to have a brilliant mind. He was a problem solver. He knew how to go in and get the job done. You can imagine being the man that he was, very prideful man. You know that he wore the best of the best clothes. When he entered a room, people knew about it. Meticulously dressed, don't you think? Appearance was impeccable. And while he was hated and feared because of what he had done in the community, he was yet given much respect. Maybe not earned respect, but he was given great respect. When he went into the restaurants, he got the best seats. When he went to the ball games, he got the box seats. Wherever he was, because of the power he carried with him, people would lift him up and make him the man. Bless you. While those on the outside feared and revered him, he, though, we see in just these few verses that he, Zacchaeus the man, was learning that this was a facade. All this stuff that he had gathered, all this power, prestige, all those silk clothing, all those things were really, you could see in those verses, if you start to read between the lines, there was something going on with him. He was beginning to realize the pretense and the pride was not everything that he thought it would be, and the emptiness. There was an emptiness in his life, wasn't there? How do we know that? Because he heard Jesus was coming to town, right? And he had heard about this man. You see, Zacchaeus had achieved everything this world in that area had to offer. And while looking so glamorous on the outside, can you imagine on the news when you turn it on and all the paparazzi's following him and everybody's going, "Boy, if only I could be Zacchaeus." Does that make you think of anybody you see on the news today, how some people glamorize all these people who have all the paparazzi following them? but they probably looked at him and said, boy, does he have an easy life. Oh, I bet he sleeps well at night. He doesn't have anything to worry about. But yet the scriptures give us a little insight to the very heart of Zacchaeus, and we see that there was something going on with him. He wasn't happy. There was an emptiness. And don't you think that in the quietness of Zacchaeus' heart, he sat in his big chair of that red foam kind of stuff that you just sit in and it just squishes and just wraps up all around you because it's so comfortable? Don't you think he just sat in there and so many times he'd say, is this all there is to life? Is this really, have I worked this hard to feel this empty? Is this all there is? And think about how lonely he must have felt, how absolutely ostracized he must have felt at times. I believe the scripture here shows us that he's feeling very lonely, very vulnerable, very isolated, and so empty. So empty. I believe that his hidden motives were starting to eat away at him, of how he had treated people. And I believe he was starting to feel just a little bit of regret. I believe, while he looked very calm on the outside, there was a war raging on the inside. I don't know if you've all have ever felt that, but I've felt that before. Calm on the outside, but the war was raging on the inside. But Zacchaeus, being the very astute man that he was, had heard somewhere that Jesus was making his way through town. And he had heard about this man. We don't know how many times he had heard about him, but we know this time it was making a difference in his life. He had heard about this one maybe that had the power to change lives. He had heard about the one who loves without any condemnation. He was wondering about this one that says, I'll accept you as you are, but I love you too much to leave you there. I believe that he had probably heard about the one who makes people feel so good on the inside that they dance in the rain on the outside. I think he had heard about the one that you could go in and he looked at you eye to eye and he goes, I'm just so glad you're here. Leave everything else behind. And I believe that he had heard about this is the one that just makes you laugh out loud. Just laugh out loud. Did you have fun laughing out loud last week? And I think Zacchaeus, in all of his glory and all that people looked and were so envious of, were thinking, if I can just get to this man, I just want to see if he could possibly be everything that I've heard. If I could just get to him. But in his mind, he thought, well, that's really not possible. Because even if I could drop my pride and go running to him, I'm short. I could never see over the crowds. I could never see him. I can't get to him. How many people around you think they could never get to Jesus this morning, girls? Because they feel little. Zacchaeus, I think, saw a glimmer of treasure like he had never seen in any of the other treasure that he had. And there was something that just caused him to not take no for an answer. Sometimes I think that when we're so desperate, we become so determined. And I think he was so desperate to find something real in life, something that wouldn't shatter, something that he didn't have to feel guilty about or regret about. He just wanted something that was real and pure and motive-free and no agendas. Don't you think? Somebody that just goes, Zacchaeus, and everything else was left behind. He was just Zacchaeus. Think about that. How many places do we go where we go, hey, Martha, and it's like, oh, it's just me, Martha. It's not all the other stuff. Or, hey, Sherry, and it's just like, Sherry, I'm just glad Sherry's here. I think that's what Zacchaeus has heard he would find if he could get to Jesus. Those eyes of just love and hope and acceptance and forgiveness. So he was very determined, and he was trying to figure out, what in the world am I going to do? How can I get there? And we see what Zacchaeus did. He truly relinquished the pride of his position to get positioned. Think about it. This was a man of town. Loved, admired, well, not loved, respected, revered. The man that was feared. And what did this man do? He ran ahead of everybody and he climbed a tree. He climbed a tree. That's not something you see people like that doing, right? Desperate times call for desperate measures sometimes, doesn't it? Zacchaeus climbed the tree. And then what happened? Sitting in that tree, probably hoping that no one would ever see him, Jesus comes by. And what does he do? What's the first thing Jesus did? He stopped and he called him by name. He knew right where he was. How many times have we said that in here? And he knew exactly what to call him. He knew where he was. Zacchaeus, he says, come on down. I'm going home with you today. 3 principles in this story that I want us to remember today as we leave coffee. 3 principles that I hope you'll leave coffee with that will get you through the holidays, will get you through the rest of your life. 1, Jesus sees us among the crowds. Think about that. Jesus sees you among the crowd of your busyness, the crowd of the people around you, the crowd of the things that you have to do. He stops and he looks and he sees us and he calls us by name. You see, Jesus already knew that Zacchaeus was in Jericho. Why? Because he had knitted him in his mother's womb, right? And anybody that's knitted in the womb, the Creator's going to keep up with him, isn't he? He knew exactly where he doesn't lose track of us, girls. Sometimes we feel like we're lost, and sometimes we don't know what the next step is. But God says, no. In fact, I'm coming your way, Zacchaeus. I've put that tree there. I know you're going to be there, and I'm going to route my way to come right around that way. How about that? Faith is a door into an open, intimate relationship with Christ, who he says comes to us. He reminds us in John 15:16, you did not choose me, but I chose you. Think about that. Put your name in there. You did not choose me, Marty. I chose you. You didn't choose me, Darlene. I chose you. You didn't choose me, Donna. I chose you. Think about who's saying that, girls. Think about who's saying that today. Pretty powerful, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Second principle, we must choose. As we stand in the crowds, do we focus on the crowds or do we follow Jesus? That's going to be a question we'll probably be asking ourselves the next few days as we get into Christmas, won't it? As our lives begin to get so crowded. Our faith is not a vicarious experience, ladies. While others can help us bring us to the knowledge of Christ and God and everything that he is, it's a very personal relationship, isn't it? From the crowd he sees us, and from the crowd we must choose him. And the third principle, we must be willing to overcome whatever hinders us from seeing Jesus in our lives. And when you think about it, that's been our theme for the last 9 weeks. We've been trying to clear the brush a little bit, to clear the things that look like there's no possible way that God could have anything to do with, but yet to kind of crack that open a little bit or look a little higher or dig a little deeper to realize that, wait a minute, maybe he is. Remember we talked about anger and resentment? Are those some of the things that could hinder us from seeing Jesus? Is that some of the crowd that could get in our way? Anger and resentment, the effects that other sin have had on us? hopefully during those weeks, and I think during your table talk time, we were able to talk about the anger and resentment and see God at work in that, didn't we? So we're able to clear that out a little bit to see, oh no, I can still see Jesus beyond that anger, right? And then we talked one week about shame and guilt, the effects of our own mistakes or sins or whatever you want to call it. And we talked about how guilt and shame is never from the Lord. That condemnation that we hear is not from Him. So we were able to clear out, weren't we? Did we take the next step? Maybe not completely, but I think a lot of work was done around those tables in that talk, wasn't it? A lot. So when we think about the anger and resentment and shame and guilt, maybe we've cleared that out a little bit. Maybe we've come above it just a little bit, girl, so we can see Jesus just a little bit more. So we don't get lost in those feelings, that we were able to see, oh, no, I see Him. I see Him there. And then remember the week we talked about all the trash talk? We talked about how football season's not the only season that a lot of trash talk happens. But that we were able to take that trash talk and begin to apply God's truth to it. And we were able to understand so much of what we hear is really not from God. That what God says is the invitations and the inviting and the things that stir up the gifts within us, that push us on to press forward. And it made it a little bit easier to know what is God and what is the trash talk. The main and most important thing when we talk about Zacchaeus, and the thing that I want you all to talk about today, is to understand that Zacchaeus shows us that it really doesn't matter, what lies behind. What matters is what God has before us, and He's promised us that He'll take all of that and turn it into this beautiful treasure that we can use. And you all have seen that happening, haven't you? You've seen that treasure unfolding before your eyes. Zacchaeus was a wee little man maybe, but he's taught us some great lessons today, hasn't he? He's taught us to be determined. He's taught us to never give up. He's taught us that it's not about power and prestige and fine linen. It's all about a person named Jesus that we can meet, that changes our lives and gives us hope and makes us want to dance even on days when we don't feel like dancing, because He's there for us in our future. Girls, we're going to wrap up our final table talk today with some really good questions about Zacchaeus and the treasures that you found along the way. And I hope that you'll use this man just to help us remember that the most important thing leaving this coffee is to always clear the brush so that we can see him. So you all take some time to talk about that today, okay? I'll be back in 30 minutes. Hello, ladies. Well, here we are, week 10 of our Everyday Treasure series. I hope it's been a series that's helped you see God all around you every day. And I hope that it's helped you to understand that where you are is right where you are supposed to be, but it doesn't mean that's where you have to stay. That's one of the beauties of Everyday Treasure. So from winding it down, I want to go back to our very first session. Do you remember when I shared with you that when I was trying to get the concept of everyday treasures around, I talked about how I love to leave little treasures along for my boys. It was just something that I did, nothing that they had to do to earn. It was just Mom saying I love you in different little ways that they would find, and it would surprise them. And so it's just a fun thing that we did around our house. Now, what I realized from that is this: the boys wanted to return the favor. They always, and isn't that the way we are as humans, that when someone does something nice for us, we want to reciprocate. That's just how we are. Well, the boys really wanted to do that, and they would go out and they'd find these little treasures that they would want to leave for me. It was the funniest thing. I promise. It happened, 99.9% of the time. They would get it. My husband would say that they would be delighted with it. But by the time they got home to give it to me, they were in tears. Why were they in tears? Because somehow they had chipped it, broken it, dropped it, shattered it, whatever. And it would just, they would come to me with this broken gift. And it was so sweet and so touching. For example, right here, can you see? This is one of them. You see, this is an angel wing, an angel that one of the boys sent. And you can tell by the time it got to me, both wings clipped, gone. And they would just come so sad, and they'd hand it to me and go, Mommy. And I would just smile, and it would just touch my heart so much. One, that they wanted to give it to me. Two, that they had taken the time to think about it. And three, that even though it was broken, they still wanted to give it to me. Which brings me back to everyday treasures. Girls, we've talked about everything that could keep us from seeing Christ. We've talked about anger. We've talked about resentment. We've talked about worry. We've talked about a lot of things there is that crowds our view, that makes us feel too short to see Jesus or unworthy to see him. We've spent 10 weeks talking about that. So to me, the only thing that's left to talk about is this, that you feel so broken, that you want to present yourself so perfect to him because he is the giver of perfect gifts. And when we think about giving ourselves to him, we go, but wait a minute, my wings are clipped, I'm broken, I'm chipped, I'm just not worthy. Well, let me tell you, he delights. If I delight in the fact that my sons will still bring something to me broken, you can only imagine how God delights in the fact that you, though you may feel broken in many ways, would still care enough about him, think enough about him, love him enough that you would still come to him with whatever brokenness that you have. So today, just like with Zacchaeus, when God stops and he looks at us and he says, I want to go home with you, it's because he loves you as you are, in your brokenness, because that's what makes you so special and so unique to him. Ladies, I hope it's been a wonderful series. I hope that you see God all around you, and I hope that you'll take him into this busy holiday season that's coming up and share him with all those other people that may feel broken around you. Have a great, great holiday, and I hope to see you back in January. Thanks for spending these last 10 weeks with me. Bye.